I would love to do it. I have my best numbers ever. It's very terrible. I have my best numbers. If you read it, am I not ruling it out? I mean, you'll have to tell me. All I can tell you is that we have a great group of people, which they don't.
All right, folks. So in a follow-up to a video that we did earlier today about Trump engaging with reporters on Air Force One, I wanted to circle back and discuss the broader conversation that he had with reporters on Air Force One about a variety of topics. And there you hear it. Much of the conversation was about whether or not Trump will try to remain in power after his constitutional term limit, his second term limit, and either run for a third term or try to remain in power indefinitely. And again, on camera to reporters, he refuses to rule it out, which is reinforced by recent reporting. We did a video about this, about Steve Bannon, one of Trump's top advisors, saying that there is a plan in development to keep him in power or to permit him to run for a third unconstitutional term. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at. Okay, we're going to play some of the ones talking about Trump's unconstitutional third-term aspirations, then dive into some other topics as well. Here's Trump.
Sir, Steve Bannon said in a recent interview that there could be plans for you to be able to run and potentially win a third term in 2028. Is that something you'd be willing to challenge the board to be?
Well, I haven't really thought about it. We have some very good people, as you know, but I have the best poll numbers I've ever had. I mean, I just solved 8 wars, and a 9th is coming. I believe Russia, Ukraine will happen. But we just did, we just left, and when you look at the treaty we just did, that was a war, that was thousands of people were already shot at the border.
So again, Trump is overstating the number of wars that he has helped broker an end to. He just can't help but lie about these things. But note again that they're like, listen, we've heard Steve Bannon say that there's a plan in effect. What about this? And he's just being coy about it. He's just saying, well, I haven't thought about it. Well, we know he's thought about it because he's been asked about this multiple times. Top advisors like Steve Bannon say that there's a plan in place. And a responsible leader, a true patriot, somebody who honored and revered the Constitution, would, of course, dismiss these questions out of hand and say, hell no, hell no. Of course I'm not running for a third term. The Constitution precludes such a thing. I will respect the Constitution above all else, and anyone in my orbit talking about or suggesting that there will be a third term, I'm flattered. It's nice that they love me so much because I'm the greatest. But of course, we respect the Constitution. The Constitution precludes that. But he won't do it because, again, he has an authoritarian tendency that we've never seen in an American president. Now, his supporters, who are not quite so MAGA, or centrists who pretend to be that, that they're enlightened centrists, right? So they don't have, loyalty, they say, to either side. They, as they always do, they'll grade Trump on a curve and say he's just trolling. He's just trolling. Well, number one, we don't know that that's true. Number two, we know he has tried to unlawfully remain in power before, see the election of 2020. Number three, even if he is trolling, would we tolerate that sort of trolling from any other president? Would the very same people say, he's trolling, don't worry about it? Would they be saying the same thing if Barack Obama had said something like that? If Bill Clinton had said something like that? No. So that's the other thing. If they can't defend Trump without hypocrisy, their defense is irrelevant. You should just make fun of them because they're losers who are Trump cultists. You understand? Again, also, I really want to emphasize this. Anyone who says there's no way, because that would violate the law and violate the Constitution, again, unlike any other president, Trump tried to remain in power unlawfully before, and a lot of people, the very same people saying he's not going to do anything at the end of his second term, many of them were the same people saying at the end of his first term, if he loses the election, he'll concede gracefully and leave power. He didn't. We were right. They were wrong. And so we have no reason to believe them now. Anyway, I digress. Let's continue.
One theory on how you might try to serve a third term is that you could run as the vice president.
Yeah, I'd be allowed to do that.
Is it the White House or the White House counsels or your legal position?
No, you'd be allowed to do that, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. I think it's too cute. Yeah, I would rule that out because it's too cute. I think the people wouldn't like that. It's too cute.
I don't think the people would like you running for a third term anyway. But again, he's saying this specific venue of running as basically pulling, in a very crude analogy, it would be like pulling a Vladimir Putin and Dmitry Medvedev. So Putin is the president of Russia now, but before he was president, I think, for 2 terms, and then he was prime minister for a term, and Dmitry Medvedev was president. But it was widely understood that Putin was the one pulling the strings while they made the necessary changes to Russian law and the Russian constitution to permit Putin to seize power again as president. So they basically said, hey, let's swap. I'll be your prime minister, but basically the power behind the throne, we're going to rework the constitution that'll let me become president again. That's one of the strategies that has been speculated that perhaps Vance and Trump will run again in 2028 with Trump as the vice president. Now, that carries with it a lot of risk because it would rely on J.D. Vance to basically resign the presidency after winning the election, right? But there's no mechanism to force Vance to resign the presidency. So that's a risky play. You're basically putting the power in Vance's hands, trusting that he would turn it back over to you. And that might be why Trump is expressing reservation about it now. Who knows? To say nothing of the fact that he might say it's too cute, and then change his mind later on. Again, we don't know. So that's Trump, again, not ruling out an unconstitutional 3rd term. What about other topics? Well, here he weighs in on Elon Musk.
Relationship with Elon these days, and is there
I think it's good. I mean, you saw that during Charlie's beautiful tribute. Elon came up. It's good with Elon. I like Elon. I've always liked Elon. Elon's good.
Have you talked to him since the memorial?
On and off a little bit. Yeah, very little. Nothing much. Look, he's a nice guy. And he's a very capable guy. I've always liked him. He had a bad spell. He had a bad period. He had a bad moment. It was a stupid moment in his life. Very stupid. I'm sure he'd tell you that. But I like Elon, and I suspect I'll always like him.
So that was when they had their big public breakup, and Elon Musk went apeshit and said that the reason that Trump isn't releasing the Epstein files is because he's in the Epstein files, which of course we have since corroborated by reporting from the conservative Wall Street Journal and other outlets that Trump's name is all over the Epstein files, not necessarily in an incriminating way, but certainly in an embarrassing way. And such FBI agents and DOJ officials were tasked with redacting Trump's name, first flagging it and then redacting Trump's name, according to, again, reporting from the conservative Wall Street Journal, which is a sister publication of Fox News. So they have every interest to try to grade Trump on a curve. And instead they're like, no, this is indeed a major component in his hesitation to release the files. So anyway, we'll see what happens as far as, Musk and Trump. But I will say, at least as of now, even though Musk has become a bit more obsequious, at times snapping at Trump over policy and government contracts, for example, they have not mended the fences such that Musk is back in the orbit of the Trump White House, which is good because Trump and Musk together are very formidable, and Musk outside of Trump's orbit and perhaps not leveraging his wealth the way that he did before, that diminishes MAGA. So we want to keep them separated. Here's another clip.
You know that if I weren't elected president, in my opinion, every automobile company in the United States would be either bankrupt or very close to it. And instead they're hitting record highs. Their stock is through the roof. You saw Ford and you saw General Motors yesterday go.
So again, he offers no evidence whatsoever that if not for him elected president, every auto manufacturer would be bankrupt. They weren't bankrupt under President Biden and Kamala Harris. He has no reason to believe they would be if Vice President Harris had won the election again. But he does this. He's the world's worst prophet, right? He's predicted during the 2020 debates. He's like, if Joe Biden wins the election, we're going to have a Great Depression style economic crash, and it never happened. It was the best economic recovery of any nation on earth post-COVID, managed by the Biden administration very adroitly. Here's another clip.
I know you're too social about the Canada tariffs. Can you walk through when you expect those to take effect? And can I ask why?
We're gonna let them know. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs. He used them sparingly, which he probably would make a mistake. He made a mistake in that. And again, I was the biggest fan of Ronald Reagan, but.
So again, he's just like shit talking Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a huge fan of tariffs. Now, maybe he didn't use them like I did. Yeah, that's the point, right? We're probably going to talk about Trump has a couple of things to say about Canada. We'll probably talk about that in a separate video because there's a lot to unpack there too. A lot of updates and developments and polling with respect to Trump's tariffs and the relationship with Canada. So we're probably going to talk about that in a separate set of videos. So we're going to skip over those. But again, it's just funny to me how all of this renewed trade war triggered with Canada is because they accurately depicted Ronald Reagan's sentiments about tariffs. Okay. So, play a couple of other clips, just random things like this right here.
Russia said this week that they've tested a new missile that can go more than 8,000 miles. Is that saber rattling for you? What is that?
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shore. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles.
Okay, so it's just like, why would you publicly announce? That's what I'm saying. This is what I don't understand about Trump. Most presidents would be like not telling the public or Russia or confirming anything about having a nuclear sub parked off their shores because that endangers the sub. Like, why would you do that? Why would you say, yeah, we've got, this thing right off, like, and you just see in the background, he's not defense, but he's State Department, Marco Rubio, and the trade ambassador, Jamieson Greer, just like they're blinking and trying to like suppress their shock. Like, you don't admit that you have vital military hardware in the vicinity. Like, you wouldn't just say, yeah, Kim Jong-un, we've got North Korea, like we've got a sub parked right off North Korea, because now you've confirmed. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't even suspect. You've confirmed it now on camera. And that's the sort of information you don't want to give up because it helps give the opposition an advantage. You want to keep that shit secret. And here he is just blasting it on live TV because he's incredibly stupid. That's important. Trump is really, really dumb. But I digress. Let's continue.
Been a big part of your trade deals with both South Korea and Japan. Why is it so important to increase our shipbuilding to counter China?
Well, pretty obvious answer to that, because we want more ships. We're going to be back in the shipbuilding industry. We have a lot of companies coming into our country now. They're going to start building. We have the shipyards available. In World War II, we were the biggest in the world in shipbuilding. And then over the years, we went wokey and stupid and weak, and we started buying ships from everybody. And, we lost that industry.
So again, this idea that we reduce the number of naval vessels because of wokeness is, again, absurd. It's incredibly reductive. The fact of the matter is that back in the Second World War, technology was such that numbers still mattered immensely, right? But that was, the Second World War was the peak of what we would consider conventional warfare, not just because it was an incredibly advanced technology at the time, but also you still had armies versus armies battling it out, right? That's really not, for the most part, how warfare is conducted these ways, conducted technologically and in terms of information, drones and missile strikes, things of that nature. I mean, it's not like we saw, it's not like when, during the War on Terror, we saw a mass projection of naval vessels and things of that nature. Not saying that it's not good militarily to have, advanced, but at this point, it's more about technological advancement more than raw numbers. And Trump doesn't seem to grasp that and seems to believe that the only reason you would have fewer numbers and reduce the total numbers of ships available is if you're woke. And it just doesn't make much sense at all. But again, that's Trump for you. So many other clips. I'm trying to actually sort out which ones we want to talk about here. Probably cover one about a Hyundai raid in Georgia by DHS. Trump has some interesting thoughts about that might get him in trouble with his new puppet master, Stephen Miller, who is the real power behind the throne, took Elon Musk's place. Let's do, it's tough. Let's do this one here, which is, no, that's the economy. We'll probably talk about that separately too. I think we're actually just going to wrap up on that one. Again, Trump talks about Canada, which we're going to discuss in a separate video. He also talks about beef prices, which he tries to blame on President Biden. We'll talk about that in an economic video. There you have it, folks. Donald Trump, once again, just disastrously engaging with reporters, not ruling out a third term, which is a big friggin' deal, weighing in on his relationship with Elon Musk, and then broadcasting to Russia that we have a nuclear sub parked right off their shore, so maybe they should be looking for it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.